In this video, we're going to look at the reports and dashboard feature available to be added into your Virtuoso instance. So within the project dashboard, if we enter into the reports tab, we can see there are two key reports, the project execution dashboard and the execution details. So first, let's look at the project execution dashboard. The first thing is that the time range of this will default to the last day. However, you can change the different time ranges or actual date ranges. Then we have some additional filters for the execution outcome, whether the goal is archived or not, and then you'll see a whole series of filters that you can set and apply. Now, once that is done, talking across the report, at the top we have what we call the big numbers. We have the overall journey execution count. So this is the number of individual executions that have occurred. Next, we have the unique journeys executed. So how many unique journeys were executed, bearing in mind some of those could have been executed multiple times. And then we have a weekly execution count. Note that this is just a testing project, so it's relatively low. And we can see a week-on-week comparison. So in this case, there's a 100% increase in the number of weekly tests that have been executed. Now, if we come down to the journey executions over time, this allows us to see different statuses, so different execution outputs over time for the given period. So we can see we have the past, the failed, and the total executions, and we can map those across so we can start to get an idea of the volume of tests that have been executed, so the peaks and troughs, but also the outcomes available within those as well. Now, just very quickly note over here that we can see at any point, we can see descriptions for what that is telling us. And also for all of the dashboards, they can be downloaded into a CSV, Excel, or as an image by clicking on the three dots here. If we scroll down, we can then see two pie charts. The journey execution outcome, which very quickly allows us to see that 88% or 60 of our tests are passing, but then 8 have failed. And we could choose to click onto that, which would then allow us to filter the entire reporting dashboard by that segment. We can then come across to the failed journey contribution. We can see this is broken down by goal, the number of journeys that contribute, in this case, to the failures. And the key thing here then is to look and to see basically what I would see would be the big segments where the most failures are occurring. So for example, this segment here, we can see it's 25% of the total, and we can see that's occurring within the set test data goal. So it's just a quick and easy way to kind of focus us to see which goal is contributing most failed journeys. We then come on down and we can see the execution operating system and browser and device. In this case, in this project, all of the tests have been executed on the Virtuoso default. However, if you're running cross-browser, then you would see a breakdown of the different operating systems and browsers and devices. We can then come across to the reasons for the journey execution failures. Now, this is really interesting because this is set in the root cause analysis of the project activity, where you can put reasons as to why individual journeys and steps have failed. Now, this isn't always set, but this is great to be able to drive from a management perspective to say you would like those reasons to be put in and for people to start segmenting as to why journeys have failed. And in this case, we can see that we've had a network and a regression contributing to some of the journey execution failures. Scrolling down, we can see the journey execution outcome. And this is the raw data where we would be able to see the pass, fail, and if there were some jobs that hadn't completed, then that would show as well. And it shows us a month-on-month view to be able to see, in this case, in July, 48 passed, 6 failed. And we can see in August, there were no failures. It just gives us the ability to see the raw stats. Then if we go down to the journey execution outcome per month as a percentage, it allows us to see actually percentage-wise, instead of having to interpret the data in the raw data, we can see actually in the stack bar graph, for instance, September, we had a very high proportion of failures, 33%, compared to July when it was only 11%. So straight away, my eye might go in and say, what happened in September that meant that 33% of our journeys failed, but then in October we had a high pass rate, 100%. If we scroll down again, we can see a breakdown by the different goals to show us that the test reporting extensions has got a 100% failure rate. So obviously I want to look into there and say what's going wrong there. Whereas I can see the sample extensions by Mosin, that's got a 9% failure rate, 91% pass rate, whereas the extensions by SCI, that's got a higher failure rate. So it helps me to focus in at an individual goal level for passes and fails. We then come down to the goal summary, where we can see a breakdown of the individual executions for those which have failed, passed, and a total. So for example, I can see that the extensions by VIA has been run the most times, passed 30, and failed 3 times. Then I can come down to the goal execution count. So this is sorted by the highest number of executions. And we can see as we drill down through, for example, what it starts to allow me to see is, for example, the sample extensions by Virendra has only been run once compared to 33 executions by extensions by Virendra. So in that case, I might like to say, well, actually, am I using some of these goals? Which are the ones I maybe should put more resourcing into because I'm spending a lot more time testing those goals? It helps me to sort through what I'm using and what I'm not. And then finally, I get a view by each of the individual team members to show me that, for example, Virendra is running a lot of tests versus, let's say, Abhijit or David are running very few. Note that you can have a user which is called scheduler. So if you're using the execution plans, then that's obviously scheduled executions and it won't be assigned to a particular team member. So that's our project execution dashboard. Note as well, by on the side here in the reports, I could choose to download that as a PDF report. So I'm now available to pass that on through to additional managers or maybe through to executives. Then the other report I want to show you is the execution details. And the execution details basically gives me a very similar view to the project activity. It gives me a breakdown of all the individual journey executions. Again, I have a series of filters I can use to filter this through. And it basically provides me almost the raw data of all the individual executions. And I can see, for example, the organization, project, goal, journey, the status, the outcome, through to things like the duration of each of the tests. And therefore I can go through and start seeing, for example, I could filter on the executions and see that I've got one that runs for 4 minutes, while I've got some other tests that are only running for a very short amount of time. And then it gives me an idea as to what are my most frequently run tests, what are those that run for a long time versus very short ones. It just gives me that granular data to be able to start looking at all of the journeys that are being executed with a variety of information. So through the new reports and dashboards feature that is available to add into your Virtuoso instance, you're able to have a project execution dashboard and execution details, which you can drill and filter through. Plus, you're able to download those into various formats to be able to provide to other stakeholders, for instance, managers and executives, to understand exactly how testing is being performed and the outcome and the performance of that in Virtuoso.